Hello and welcome. You're watching My India, My Life Goals, a campaign where the TV9 network has collaborated with India's Union Ministry for Culture. Now, through this campaign, we are creating an awareness among citizens of India to follow their life goals. And when we say life, we mean LIFE, or lifestyle for environment. And those goals, as coined by India's Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, as citizens, we always keep talking about our fundamental rights, and of course, they are very important. But what's also important are our fundamental duties. There are, of course, 11 fundamental duties that every citizen must perform, and one of them is caring for and protecting our natural environment. Now, what can the companies of India do in that aim apart from us as individual citizens? And that is the theme for the Digital Baithak that we are hosting at this stage, the TV9 Digital Baithak series of webinars. And today's theme is, can India Inc. preserve for posterity, adding people and planet to profit? And for this TV9 Digital Baithak, we are being joined by Mr. Arun Arora, Head Strategy and Communications, Maven Chetak Group Foundation, Dr. Rajiv Chibbar, Vice President, External Affairs, CSR Policy, Government Relations and Outreach, Sajanand Medical Technologies, Anand Singhania, President, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry and CEO, JK Enterprises. And we also have Mr. Anil Kashi Murarka, MD Mirachem Industries and founder Ample Mission, joining us. Thank you all of you for taking time out to be with us over here. I'm going to begin by asking Mr. Arun Arora. There is, of course, the all-important ESG goals, or environment and social goals, that are the hot topic of discussion both amongst companies in India and abroad. But if I can ask you, Mr. Arora, how can Indian companies contribute to this aim for preserving for posterity, adding both people and profit to the planet?
First of all, I really appreciate the theme that you've chosen, Can India Inc. preserve for prosperity, adding people and panel to profit. To begin with, can we consider replacing the word profit with prosperity and also extrapolating it to make prosperity for everyone, all stakeholder? Supposing we bring in inclusive growth and replace profit with prosperity, and we ensure prosperity for everyone, then I'm sure we'll reach a step closer to the desired goal. That is number one. Number two, before we hand it over to the next set of people, I also want to add a fourth P to this equation. Why limited to three Ps? Supposing we bring in perpetuity. If we bring in perpetuity and perpetual resources, so that we can ensure that future generation will have ample resources left for them even after we consume, by using various methods. One of the methods could be using the 3 R's, that is reusing, reducing and recycling. Before I'll request others also to join in now. Before we, I want to cite some interesting example to substantiate my point, but I'm sure we have other learned colleagues.
Of course, we'll take it to Dr. Rajiv Chibbar, then Vice President External Affairs, Sajanand Medical Technologies. Dr. Chibbar, talk to us. India, either which way, was a leader when it comes to caring and protecting for the environment before colonization took over us. And now you have Indian companies, modern technology companies coming out of India. I'm sure we have the technology and the know-how to attain our environment social goals better than anybody else.
No, absolutely. And first of all, thanks TV9 and all the other colleagues for this important discussion. I think, what our earlier speaker said is we need to move beyond the PPP model. And here, as he coined the PPP in a very different way, I would also coin the PPP in a very different way. I would say prosperity for a public purpose. Now, when we talk about a public purpose, everyone in the ecosystem becomes a partner to it, a stakeholder to it. And, we need to recognize that the urgent need for sustainable practices, social responsibility and ethical governance in all aspects of life that you started with needs to be something that embodies our core values and reflects the aspirations for a better future. And for this, both big, small, or medium, any size company needs to work towards to mitigate not only the challenges but also preserve the earth for generations to come. Now, this has been now recognized very well that under CSR and since 2013, since CSR has become a major, game player within the corporate field like us, we've now coined this new buzzword called ESG, and this is passing on a trend now.
Right.
But I feel that this needs to really look at the kind of seriousness that India Inc needs to look at, and the seriousness can only come when we see that happening from grassroots levels, and grassroots levels is where you would see prosperity attaining at social levels, at the governance level, because the government also plays a very important role here. And then ultimately within corporates, how do we look at mitigating it and de-risking it? So I'll stop here because I've just given the tip of the iceberg in
Fair
terms of
enough.
discussion.
Stay with us. Let me take this across to Mr. Anant Singhania, President, IMC, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and CEO, JK Enterprises. Mr. Singhania, talk to us. ESG is a term, but it's something that needs to be embodied from the company in a cultural way so that it trickles down to the last employee.
Thank you, Krishna. Just want to clarify, I'm the immediate past president. I just became past this
Fair
early
enough.
this month. But thanks for having me here on TV9. And I echo what my fellow panelists mentioned. I think for sustainability and ESG, the S part is very important that there's a buy-in by the masses. I think climate change has really impacted all of us, and we've seen a very wet month of July. We've seen incessant rains and flooding and, lots of natural disasters which are doing around. What I think we need to do is we need to bring in the sensitivity of how our choices impact the climate, impact the society, impact the environment. And therefore, I think the awareness has to come in terms of how each one of us can make a difference, because India Inc. is limited, right? We have limited number of people, but when you talk about the average consumer, are they really looking at buying responsibly? Are they supporting companies which are being sustainable? Are they buying things which are recyclable? Are they buying things which are where companies are focusing on waste to riches? So I think that awareness is very important, that needs to come about.
Right. We also have Mr. Anil Kashi Murarka, MD Medicam Industries founder, Ample Mission, also joining us. Mr. Murarka, one thing if I were to ask you, what do you think is the top priority as far as the way Indian companies are going towards achieving their environmental goals?
First and foremost, thank you so much for allowing me to join in. It's a pleasure being here amongst these senior panelists around. The fact is, we all talk about sustainability today. What is sustainability? I think the panelists here would agree with me. The word sustainability is talked about of late, but sustainability was always there somewhere down the line. The fact is, we need to understand whatever we are talking about right now. I'm too young to really comment on all this, but this is a very true confession before you guys. Sustainability was always there. We are just talking about it. If we were not sustainable enough, why would we be in the global market today? The fact remains, जैसे अभी अरुण जी ने कहा, Mr. Anand ji ने कहा, it's all about that awareness within us. Each one of us has to come forward to try and take something on a different level. That awareness has to be within us to do something better for the motherland. We need to ensure one thing for sure, in the generations to come, whatever best we can do today to save planet Earth would be a better tomorrow for the generations to come. Right. Eco-friendly measures, what we talk about, is the main crux today. Let's ascertain whatever we are doing, it's not about just money making, it's about saving the planet.
All right, fair enough. Let me take this then across to Mr. Arun Arora again. Mr. Arun Arora, talk to us about what is happening at the in India Inc. as far as achieving environmental goals are concerned at currently, and what do you think needs to be done? What do you think needs to be instituted for the way forward?
Yeah, Krishna, thank you. Very relevant question. Let me begin with a confession. I don't know, somehow God decided to put me in industries which are, some of the most polluting industries. I worked with automobile for a very long time. I was with Maruti, that leads to pollution. I worked with mining sector for a long time. And currently I'm working with logistics sector. And I'm really happy to see the animation that TV9 has used shows logistics, a lorry moving across the screen. So that reminds me to share what are various things that we're going to do. I belong to this company called Chetak Logistics, and we are into logistics. Since we transport, we create pollution, we create concern for society at large. We have decided to be India's first green logistics company. Now, that's a huge challenge because you are driving diesel vehicle. How can you become a green logistics company? For starters, I'm responding to what is that India Inc. can aspire, how they can contribute. We tying up with Tata group of companies, and we are helping them develop trucks which will be run on electricity. For instance, currently we have only cars and two-wheelers, but we do not have heavy commercial vehicles. So we are doing research with Tata group of companies to manufacture and create electric trucks which we can use. That will be the one of the major area that we are focusing on. That is number one. Second big component of logistics is the warehousing. That is where you stuff your stuff, and the entire material handling equipment runs on diesel mostly. So that is the second step we are taking, wherein we are bringing in CNG driven or electric driven material handling equipment. So that is another area that we are focusing on. And like you mentioned, demonstrated on your animation, you're showing solar panels for our warehousing. We are converting the entire warehouses which will be driven by solar energy, will not be consuming normal thermal electricity at all. In addition to that, when we transport goods from place A to place B, eventually they have to reach the end consumers. So what we are going to do is we are going to even go for smaller vehicles with our partners who are actually take care of the last mile connectivity. We are insisting that they also use electric vehicles so that we take out the pollution out of the entire supply chain. We are working with our vendors, we are working with our dealers so that everybody in the supply chain is sensitive to this. Not only that, we're not limiting at that, like my fellow panelists mentioned correctly, that it is the role of the society as well. So instead of saying what is society can do, can I say what is that I can do, what is that my companies can do, what is that my employees can do. So we have brought in the concept of ISR in addition to CSR, which is individual social responsibility, wherein we sensitize each employee to be sensitive to environment, sensitive to society, so that this percolates across the organization. Thank you.
All right, stay with us, Dr. Chibar. That's fascinating initiatives from Saroda's end. But talk to us, big companies, when they go forward, how many of these initiatives, are able transferable to some of the bigger companies out there? And also talk to us about, some of the other trends you've witnessed in terms of companies being proactive about their environmental goals and what they're doing about it.
Well, I think when you say bigger companies, it's a collective effort by all companies. So I think the first thing that we need to understand, the more you go bigger, the more the carbon footprint adds.
Exactly why I'm asking the question. Exactly why I'm more concerned.
Exactly. So when most of these companies look at CSR and ESG valuation, they look at 3 to 4 typical policy maneuvering that could happen within the company, and that is where which will take it through the entire mitigation aspect. So one is obviously the enhanced focus on long-term value creation, and this is a holistic approach that incorporates not only CSR, environment, and social factors, but alongside to change governance considerations also. So that's how companies can mitigate risks, uncover new business opportunities, and create long-term value for all stakeholders. The other thing, and when I ended with stakeholders, the other thing which companies would want to do, and that too when they go bigger, and we talk about, maybe an Asian Paints, maybe a Tata's, maybe, Dabur and others who have environmental impacts and they know how to mitigate it, they would look at evolving stakeholder expectations also. Because today, stakeholders, including your investors, customers, employees, communities, and even your internal employees, as Mr. Arora said, they become increasingly concerned about the environmental and social issues. They demand transparency, accountability, ethical practices from the organization whom they are engaged with. So ESG reporting and performance indicators that enables the companies to demonstrate their commitment to sustainable practices and respond to the changing expectations of their stakeholders. The third is, which everyone would be looking at, all our panel members here would also agree, is mitigating risks and seizing opportunities. Now, this is very important. You saw how Mr. Arora talked about, it's like ESG frameworks provide a systematic approach for identifying, accessing and mitigating risks associated with environmental, social, and other climate change, resource scarcity, labor practices, regulatory compliances. These are just few examples of risks that companies face in today's world. So how we mitigate those risks? But over and above that, we also convert those risks into seizing opportunities. You saw how Asian Paints, they've now come up with their paints which are more environmental friendly. Their putties which are there when discarded or when scratched off are more environmentally disintegrated. So additionally integrating sustainability into business strategies can uncover new market opportunities, drive innovation, and faster resilience to the face of future disruptions. And the last is, which is the most important thing for any company, whether it's me, whether it's the top companies in the country, is the access to capital and investor confidence. When you have that, that's a very crucial consideration for a company, because the decision making processes, the entire capex opex that is going to be utilized in this particular exercise, and the responsibility of companies to deliver superior financial performances by tweaking these entire changes in the company's know-how and thoughts is very, very important. So I think this is more at a corporate level when you look at it, but then when it percolates down, it percolates at a societal level. So I'll stop here.
Right, fair enough. Mr. Singhania, if I were to come to you, and I want to pick up on one of the points that he was talking about, and that is balancing the needs of all stakeholders while achieving environmental goals. Now, that's certainly not an easy balance to strike, is it?
Yeah, so I think first of all, companies need to focus on how they can increase shareholder value. And shareholders are really looking at sustainable, ethical practices by companies which want to grow. So if you look at various companies, you look at, for example, Hindustan Lever, they have a program called Shakti, which is empowering the women and the villagers, where basically they're ensuring that their value addition goes up. Now, if you look at India, we are the fifth largest country in the world, first by terms of economy, and in the next 5 years we should become the third largest. But if you look at the per capita, our per capita is, I think, ranked 140 or something at $1,500-$1,600, or let's say they're $2,000. They're very, very, very backward in terms of our per capita. So in order for our per capita to increase, they have to basically ensure that the consumption has to go up, the economy has to grow, and the sustainable practices and the stakeholders have to get the benefit. Another area is that use of sustainable material, whether it is in my predecessor talked about reducing, recycling, and reusing. So, a focus as stakeholders are looking for companies that are looking at waste to riches in terms of how you can reduce your consumption by using the byproduct into other areas. So when we talk about CSR, you only talk about 2%, but a lot of companies are now focusing on the 98%. How they can add value as a corporate to the entire stakeholders, whether it's at the rural level. And when India has to move from say $3.75 trillion up to 5 and then to 10, we need to basically take India from becoming India to Bharat. That urbanization to ruralization, that urbanization has to give value to the masses.
Right, Mr. Murarka, value to the masses, value to stakeholders. Delivering these two will be key for Indian companies to take up their environmental goals seriously going forward.
Definitely, it will make a big impact. But I'll get back to Singhania ji, what he rightly said about recycle and reusing. It's a very important factor today. See, we belong to a chemical industry. As far as whatever chemicals we produce are basically for textile and paper. Now, when we talk about recycle and reusing, what Singhania ji rightly said, I can quote one example, one company which is doing it at large, the ABG and Raymond's again. It's amazing. The way they are recycling the fabric is extraordinary. Everything is a cost. And if people are ready to bear that cost aspect, definitely it can be a better future tomorrow. Recycling is such an important factor because, due respect to Singhania ji, the way Raymond's and the Aditya Birla group are doing it and taking it up, if all companies come up together, this can make it at a different level. India, we're talking about being at number 5, as Singhania ji rightly said. It can go to those number 1 segments, there was एक दौर था जब इंडिया को हिंदुस्तान को we used to call it सोने की चिड़िया. But yes, we look forward for that future aspect again, to India shine back, roll back to what it always was. We are a country which has got so much of potential, but we need to synergize all that, come together and make it at a different level.
Right, stay with us, Mr. Arun Arora. At this stage, what is important to discuss is what can the government do to help India Inc. achieve its environmental goals? How can they incentivize companies into being serious about their environmental goals?
Okay, again, Krishna, thank you. Very interesting question and very interesting thoughts from Chibarji, Singhania ji, and Murarka ji. Let me share a couple of examples where the industry expects some support from the government. I'll share an example. I used to work with Jindal Steel and Power, and India incidentally has one of the largest reserves of coal. And coal, thermal power generated out of coal is considered as most polluting one. But can we spend some money on research and development? And at Jindal, I'm sure we were working on 2 huge big projects, and I'm sure other power companies are also working on the same. We were converting coal to liquid. That was one big project, and we were also converting coal to gas. In case you don't want to waste the huge reserves of coal that India possesses, because Western countries would like us to, get rid of this coal thing. But they have used it during their growth, and we also entitled to use it during our growth. But can we find a way of using this coal stock that India has into an environmental friendly way by converting coal into liquid or coal into gas, which is very expensive as far as research is concerned? That is where the support of Government of India is required. In case Government of India can pitch in this research and development cost, so that we can quickly convert the existing coal into liquid or gas, which will be far less polluting as compared to power generated by thermal power plants. That is number 1. Number 2, we all love talking about e-vehicles. We talking about e-2-wheelers, e-cars. But at the end of the day, they are getting charged by using electricity, which is again being generated by thermal power plants. So that means actually we are still using those resources. Therefore, it is essential to address the root cause, that is coal-based energy is polluting. Therefore, can we convert that coal-based energy process into something that is more environmental friendly to arrive at that? And that is where the government's intervention will be a great help. And I'm sure a lot of companies, including Adani's and Tata's and Vedanta's and Jindal's, they are dying to work on coal to gas projects and coal to liquid projects. This is one example that came to my mind.
Right, Dr. Chibar, if I were to ask you then, in that sense, the government essentially has to incentivize companies into adopting renewable energy in as many ways as possible to perform therein operations. And therein, and finally, you'll reach a stage where literally they use no non-renewable energy for any of their operations.
No, absolutely. See, that adoption will still take a long time if you look at it. What Arora ji was mentioning is something which we need to delve upon more. See, as companies, we may look into doing all CSR, ESG practices, but then regulations within those areas are not standardized in India. So, limited regulatory framework is another problem through which there is a number of companies who do not get to address sustainability and responsible business practices. So we need to see how that can help us. A new initiative by the Honorable Prime Minister was the Z formula, the zero effect, zero defect formula. To an extent, that's something which also looks at how corporates or companies would do less waste, do an increased environmental subjugation practice, to look at some of the resources and expertise that they can or we can spruce up. That is where we get that benefit out of it, or that is where we could get some kind of perks out of it. But then, are these enough? Are these going to really sustain for a long term? All those have not been immediately thought of. And that is because, we cannot predict 25 years from now. We can only look at the kind of recedence that India is going through. We do talk at the United Nations Climate Change Framework about how the global West for the over 125 odd years has now, because of industrialization, made the environment to what it is today, where we are having these droughts, we're having these excessive rainfalls and climate change happening all over. But then if we look at our trajectory also, the trajectory initially since 80s to till now has been on a similar path. To mend that, we need to go back to that 1.5 mitigation program that globally has been agreed upon. But for that, there is a lack of awareness, there is a lack of capacity also. Big companies may be able to do it, or companies like, I'll give you an example of my company. We are a zero discharge company. Being a cardiovascular manufacturer, we can't afford to have anything which where our products touch water or are exposed to anything which gives out effluents. The only effluent which may be coming out of our factory is raw material, and that raw material is also recycled and reused into making our stents or making our guide wires or catheters or other high-end products. But at the end of the day, not every company or not every segment of companies, whether it's small, large, medium, SMEs also are aware of these challenges, are aware of these regulatory requirements. And then regulatory requirements change at every district and every state also, depending on which area are you in. If you're in the northeastern area or if you're in the forest dwelling area, your regulatory requirements change dramatically. Now, that is where the Reliances, the Ambanis of the world also work into, and they face that tune around it. So I think there is more scope where regulators and companies need to sit together, discuss the fact that what fosters a culture of sustainability and responsible business practices. Then maybe we could move forward to the next level of what evaluates out of it.
Right, stay with us. I'm going to take this to Mr. Singhania as well. Tell us, from that perspective, how do companies, operate, in an environment where, it has become increasingly important to be aware of environmental goals. Yet at the same time, we haven't done it in so many years. Now we have to suddenly go back to doing something which we were doing well before. How does that work, Mr. Singhania?
So I think I'll just touch upon what my fellow panelists said. So I think I like the point what Mr. Arora said about the move towards electric vehicles. But I think what I understand is the study shows that EVs and hybrids are still more environmentally cost effective as compared to fuel-based engines. Murarka ji, I'm very happy to hear that you talked about how textile companies are looking at reuse and recycle, and Raymond is part of the JK group, so very happy to hear that. But talking about companies, I think one very important factor is that the government support in terms of, you see, government has brought in schedules where people are actually, they actually, let's say they are gauging what other resources they're using, right? So you're picking up what's your water consumption, what's your electricity consumption, what are your consumption across various things. What you need to do is basically see what is your impact on environment. If you're in the construction business, what is the impact that you're doing when you're getting your materials which are coming from the earth, and how that is impacting environment. Talking about standards, I mean, today we don't have a carbon pricing, right? We talk about decarbonization, we talk about carbon being neutral, we talk about going towards net zero, but we don't have a carbon pricing. I think India has been in the forefront of several initiatives which are worldwide, whether it is our Jam Trinity or the UPI or our ability to, deliver services at the click of a button. I think India needs to take that thing forward. I mean, I'm very happy that Prime Minister Modi came up with this entire thing at COP26 on life, on this lifestyle as a change. But what can we do is collectively on the global stage? I mean, I think even the 21-day challenge, I mean, is it just, do we have to wait for global Earth Day to switch off the lights and save power, or can we do it on a sustainable basis, on an everyday basis? So unless we don't bring in sustainability into our daily, our daily core, like into our daily lives, I think it will take a lot of time to go down that value in change.
Right, stay with us. I mean, then take this across to Mr. Murarka only. Mr. Murarka, okay, there are ways and means of doing things at this stage, despite the challenge, and some of them you yourself have figured out as well. But in a larger scale, how do companies find ways to keep replacing non-renewable energy sources with renewable energy sources going forward?
I think the biggest factor here is we need to understand whatever the Honorable Prime Minister does today, every state of India has to adapt it precisely. The biggest challenges here right now is the central announces something, but every state has got its own way of taking up things. Now, how do you really eradicate that? That system has to flow in somewhere. You just can't overrule the center and keep doing whatever the state wants. Till this doesn't happen, I'm sure the fellow panelists would agree with me on this. Whatever we do, we are totally handicapped because of the state procedures. One rule has to prevail. What the center announces, every state has to follow. You can't just keep doing things on your own, keep dictating terms. We, as small-time industrialists also, it really cannot cope up with things like this, If India has to shine globally, we need to understand that there has to be one rule for every state in the country.
All right, Mr. Arora, I want to take the focus back away from everybody else to us, the consumer. How can we as consumers help ensure that we support businesses that are serious about achieving their environmental goals? How can we as people hold our businesses more accountable?
Yeah, I think again, Krishna, I'm glad you brought it to public at large and all of us. So despite belonging to the corporate world, we are at the end of the day are citizen of India and responsible citizen of India, or at least we would like to be the responsible citizen of India. So absolutely. So renewable sources of energy is something that we all should encourage ourselves, our children to use and follow. That is number one. Parallelly, maybe going back to the earlier question of where do we expect government to help us? So we have to work on a twin path. If we want public at large to start using renewable energy, so we have to continue to bring down the cost of renewable energy. For instance, we are fortunate as far as solar energy is concerned. We have this available in abundance across India, across states, unlike certain countries like Europe and all. our hydro energy or tidal energy or wind energy may have certain limitation. Idle plants work for say 6 months in a year, or wind mills and even tidal waves have limit of whether you have sufficient wind sourcing those sources of power. In case we encourage solar energy in a big way, for instance, China managed to bring down the cost of solar panels. Similarly, if Indian government also supports that, so why can't all of us, public at large, use solar panels or design new panels which can be put even on the walls at each of our housing societies and convert the entire solar energy into day-to-day use, unlike using the thermal power. Second is, I go back to my point about also not wasting the huge thermal power supply that we have. Let us find some ways of converting even thermal power, making it extremely environmental friendly by converting that into some form of gas. For instance, CNG and LPG is far more environmental friendly as compared to gasoline or petrol or diesel. Similarly, in case we can convert coal into gas, then all of us, whether we are using it at home, whether we are using it for our vehicles, all of us will be, as responsible citizen, will be able to convert to renewable energy or responsible conventional energy methods.
Right, Dr. Chibar, that's a very important part of the entire puzzle, isn't it? Because you have companies, we need responsible companies, we need consumers who opt for products or services of responsible companies, isn't it, Dr. Chibar?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's something which needs to be the demand of a consumer, and that is where behavior change comes into fact. That is where maybe corporates going to schools, corporate going to colleges, or working with them to create the kind of responsible behavior is required. Small examples. Why real estate companies? If I or we've got this entire city sprawling every now and then, and big buildings coming up. Why can't we have sustainable practices demanded by the consumer themselves, the flat owners themselves? Why can't they request Crabtree to come up with such switches, or there are already available, which we have in our offices? The moment I leave my room right now, within 35 to 40 seconds, if there is no human interface, the lights switch off. We need to have similar things, and these things the consumer needs to demand. The consumer needs to move forward to. Similarly, water practices, similarly, your sanitation practices, everything is something where behavior change needs to be at the fulcrum of it. Behavior change needs to really imbibe. And we talk, catch them young is just just some kind of a slogan, but I think we need to catch the elders also. We need to change each and every part of the society that is working towards sustainability, that can possibly have a ripple effect in addition to what corporates are doing, in addition to what the government is doing. So I think somewhere the conjunction needs to be made, where behavior change becomes a two-way communication tool, where people understand this, people demand this, and that's how the corporate world looks at the consumerism that is going to have an impact on their business.
Right, Mrs. Singhania, so we can redefine the way consumerism evolves at this stage. We as consumers become responsible. We demand responsible products and services, and then correspondingly responsible companies. This is a great way of ensuring a virtuous cycle, isn't it, Mrs. Singhania?
I think the question is very important. The issue is, how do we consume responsibly? So I think there are three ways how we consume responsibly. Either it is by choice, it's by fashion, or it's by a value proposition. So, if you look at what has happened in the last, say, 5-6 years, right? You look at the entire digital revolution that has happened in India. First, you had Demon, then you had COVID, which basically allowed us to move toward digital, right? You had no other choice but to move to digital. That's why UPI is clocking 10 billion transactions a month, and they are expecting to clock 1 billion a day. Why is that happening? Because there's a convenience, right? So if you build in convenience and a cost which is lower than something else, there's going to be a direct shift. You don't need to tell people to consume responsibly. You don't have to tell them that, look, climate is affecting everybody, floods are happening, temperatures are rising, you must consume properly, right? It will automatically happen. Today, data is the new oil, right? So if we can look at the 90,000 startups we have in India, right? Each of these startups are there for a reason. They're trying to basically fix life issues. So if there's a solution which will work for masses, that's where the shift will automatically happen. So I think that's where we need to be. In From the government also, I think a couple of things are there. I mean, we are already getting maybe a tax incentive, right? So if you put solar panels in your on your roofs, if you get a tax benefit, right? So then you will able to move towards renewables. Because if we need to get to net zero by 2070, it's just not going to happen by the government's initiatives. Each one of us have to be part of that role to do it. If you look at how we consume, our materials at home, do we do waste segregation? Is it only happening because societies demand it, or is it happening because we are conscious about it? Do we take reusable bags when we go for shopping, or do we consume more? Can we reduce our consumption responsibility? That's something one needs to do it at an individual level. I like that concept about individual social responsibility, because if we become conscious, as I become conscious, then collectively we can make a big impact on the society and on India.
Right, Mr. Murarka, it's all about the collective effort, and at this stage, what better collective effort than increasing sales reverse way. Like consumers come and give more sales to a company because they are environmentally responsible, and that way the needs of all stakeholders are met appropriately.
Indeed, again, coming back to what Arora Sahab rightly said, key. When you talking about solar energy, how about getting it done into your own society? That's a fantastic concept. And as Singhani ji rightly pointed out, if there are some tax benefits given by the government, people will opt for it. For example, to be honest with you, the place where I am right now, I'm also a chairman of my society. We have already started this initiative. Why not get into that system? If we know one has to be a trend setter, people will definitely follow. But if the government of India intervenes and has some tax benefits, as said by Singhania ji also, it can make a bigger impact. Like what Dr. Shivar said, once he leaves his room, the sensors will ensure that the lights go off. This can be done as a compulsion by all the builders themselves. It can be a great effort, and it's not a big cost at all. All these big time builders are demanding huge prices right now. If this is just a catalyst which can be added to that, it can create a better impact. Coming back to what we said, as Singhani ji also rightly addressed, what Arora Saab is doing, interesting again, ISR. This is what is required in the continent today for each one of us. Like for example, you should not feel कि हम अपने आप मियां मिट्टू हो रहे हैं. We basically have taken some initiatives at large, where today Bombay having huge rainfalls, monsoons at its peak, you can see the potholes throughout the continent. We have a young team of about 70 odd young boys and girls. We have been going on streets every Saturday, Sunday to ensure that we fill those potholes. Even if one life can be saved of a biker, it is great. If we all jointly get into these efforts, it makes a bigger impact for sure. Initially, when we started this, people were laughing at us. But now the traffic police and all that, they're all together with us, ensuring that we do it very smoothly and effectively.
Mr. Arora, that's how truth works, isn't it? First they laugh at you, then they are against you, and then they accept it as evidently as obvious, isn't it, Mr. Arora?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, another interesting thought comes to me as we get amazing ideas from Chipper ji and Murarka ji, Singhania ji. I travel from Delhi to Gurgaon, and we see this so-called cyber city, which looks like New York or Singapore. all big glass facade buildings. Very simple, small idea. Whenever any such glass building comes up with huge buildings with glass facade, they should make it compulsory for the entire glass to be solar panels. Now there's already been discovered that all those glass panels can be converted into solar panels. Either companies like DLF and other big real estate companies, they can do it on their own, or maybe government of India can make it compulsory. All the glass facade that is going to be used has to contain solar panels. At least all those buildings will be self-sufficient. They will be drawing from the grid and will be saving so much on the energy cost. We can look at right, left, and center. We can find hazard ideas, and even youngsters are throwing in so many ideas. So I think
Right.
absolutely right. Collectively, in case we join hands and we work together for social causes and for greater national environmental causes, we can certainly do it, and I'm sure we'll do it.
Right, absolutely. Collective effort is what is needed, even to get India Inc. To own up to its own responsibilities towards caring for and protecting the natural environment. I'm afraid we can continue talking, but this has been a wonderful discussion. We have completely run out of time. I'm going to thank Mr. Arun Arora, Head Strategy and Communications, Mavin, Chetak Group and Foundation, Dr. Rajiv Chibar, Vice President, External Affairs, CSR, Policy, Government Relations and Outreach at Sajanand Medical Technologies, Mr. Anant Singhania, CEO of JK Enterprises, and Mr. Anil Kashi Murarka, MD, Miracam Industries and founder, Ample Mission. Thank you all of you gentlemen for taking time out to be with us here on this TV9 Digital Baithak. And with that, we wrap up this edition of My India, My Life Goals. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.